Hi everyone, Facebook Live with me, Jacob Winge. It's our first Winge Weekly. Given everything that's going on right now with the coronavirus, we're moving our campaign online to talk to voters about issues that they care about. So if you're able to see this, you can type in your questions on our page, and you can also send them in via email if you don't have Facebook. And we are getting those in. We've had a few sent in already. And I'll just kind of give a brief introduction of myself if we haven't met yet, while we wait for a few people to log on, as well as get some questions up and going. So my name is Jacob Winge. I'm a candidate for Collier County Commissioner in District 1. So if you live in East Naples, the Isles of Capri, Port of the Isles, Marco Island, Goodland, and the surrounding areas, this is a very important election coming up in August of 2020. Hopefully everything clears up and we can make sure that we have a great turnout. The presidential preference primary just ended, as well as the city of Naples. So I'm optimistic that we're going to have a great turnout for this election. We're at a turning point here in our community. A lot of big issues are coming to a head because we failed to tackle them head on. And that's one of the reasons why I'm in this race. Have over 3 years experience on county advisory boards, been involved in the community for almost 14 years, serving on a variety of nonprofit, government, and community organizations, leading on the issues that matter most to those in this community. We've had affordable housing issues facing our environment, our water, tourism, public safety, roads, transportation, and we need someone who's ready on day one, tested, and with a record to tackle these tough issues and be able to unite people against a common vision to make sure that we can push forward for our friends, our neighbors, and our families to have a better future. That's why I'm in this race, for you. So we'll go to a couple of our questions that we've had. The first one is on housing. This was sent in through email, and on that topic, it's very important that as we plan for our future, that we provide different varieties of housing options. Affordable housing comes up a lot in this race and in issues in the past in the paper. And it's really important to note that affordable housing has a statutory definition. So affordable housing can only be created if it supports a certain level of income. And that's for a family of one, a family of two, a family of three, and so on. So when we talk about housing, it's in a very broad sense, and affordable housing is one piece of that. Workforce housing is also a piece of this puzzle. And that's for things like first responders, essential personnel. You can have workforce housing for teachers, for county employees, and that is really the direction that we need to be moving in to make sure that we're supplying housing for those that really need it most. When people talk about affordable housing and they say, oh, this is housing for teachers and law enforcement officers and firefighters, well, it's not, because they don't qualify for it. Their income level is too high past that state-defined statutory definition of affordable housing. So when we look at this issue and developers come to the table wanting to build a project, whether it's in East Naples, whether it's on Marco Island, whether it's at the other side of the county, we have to look at this as the whole issue working together, because it's going to affect roads and transportation, public safety, our schools, and we need to keep that in mind as we look to this issue. When developers come forward with a proposal, the commissioners need to be prepared to ask tough questions in pertaining to affordable housing, workforce housing. If they're going to have a certain number of units set aside, how long are those units going to be set aside for? Are they going to be set aside for an income bracket, a certain place of employment? If they're going to be for teachers, are they going to be for a nearby school? Are they going to be for the whole district? And so on. And in that, we need to make sure that we're also holding developers accountable and putting a very clear line in the sand as far as what projects we want to see move forward. We have an East Naples Community Development Plan that is in the works. The county staff and the planner are working through some kinks right now with everything going on and trying to hold public meetings in a way that doesn't necessarily knock anyone out of that discussion. But I really encourage everyone to be involved in that plan, because that is going to define what a large part of District 1 is going to be. Whether you live in East Naples or not, you're going to be affected by where roads are, what improvements are made, what commercial is built in the area, and what residential is built in the area. For too long, we've been the dumping ground for affordable housing. We've seen an onslaught of storage units, gas stations, and other things being built in the area. And it's really important to make sure that we plan for a future in a responsible way that makes sure that we can have jobs and economic opportunity, but also the variety of housing. So another key to that is when a developer comes forward with a project, we need to kind of scrap the outdated antique style of planned unit developments where it's a cookie cutter one size fits all. It doesn't work anymore. We've outgrown that, and we need to come up with more common sense solutions. Putting apartments closer to the road, then maybe you have a stream of villas and townhomes, and then you can put some of those bigger expensive homes in the back and still have a variety of pricing options where the developer is still going to be able to make some money, but it also doesn't cut anybody out of having options for housing in the area. Another key part of that is making sure that when we're building these projects that we have the infrastructure in place. And that's going to be important to everything from street lights to sidewalks, bike paths, and really making sure that we encompass that in the area as well. Mixed use development is another very big thing when we're talking about this issue, because as we look at a lot of projects like storage units that we've had in the area and the great need for commercial development that both East Naples needs for its own residents, but also for the surrounding areas, whether it's residents in Golden Gate, the city of Naples, Marco Island, out east to the Golden Gate Estates. East Naples needs more of a commercial hub to better service those populations living in those areas. And mixed use is a great way to do that, where we can have office space, restaurants, small businesses, and then putting residential above those, as well as putting residential in the industrial areas. This was something that was brought on during the last Urban Lands Institute study that unfortunately the County Commission voted down 4-1, something that I think is a really important piece that we can move forward with that makes a lot of sense to both have a mixed-use development impact in a very positive way, but also support small businesses in those industrial areas that we do have in East Naples and also in the Pine Ridge industrial area as well. So another big thing that we have coming forward is the need to balance our growth with the environment. Our environment is everything. Whether you are someone who likes to kayak by Cape Romano, go boating out by Rookery Bay, dock a boat at Port of the Isles, this is what makes us so special, is our water, our natural resources, our mangrove habitats, and we have to make sure that we plan for growth, but also that we plan for growth by putting our environment first. And one of the best ways to do that is preserving lands. Conservation Collier is going to be on the ballot, and we've talked about this at some of the forums, and I think it's very dangerous when we have other candidates in this race that are not only having a short-sighted view when it comes to growth in our environment, but also kind of putting a one-size-fits-all policy down where they won't support preservation of public lands and preservation of lands that are in danger of being developed. A lot of people look at different areas of the county, and especially in District 1, and they say, oh, well, that lot's never going to get built on, that's mangrove, that's protected. All it takes is a very creative developer and a very expensive attorney, and you can pretty much build anywhere as long as you're willing to wait for the time to get the permits. And this is a very important thing because we've got a lot of areas like Rookery Bay that are surrounded by lots that still can be developed upon with the right permits and with the right steps through the county zoning and permitting processes. So it's very important that we have a commissioner that's able to stand up to developers, stand up to attorneys, lobbyists, and tell them that, this is how we're going to do things, and certain lands are not going to be built on. Another big misconception too is the dollars that Conservation Collier currently has, and a lot of people think, oh, this is just government sitting on, taxpayer dollars and not doing anything with it. This could go to roads or building schools, so on and so forth. Well, when Conservation Collier was passed on the original ballot for the first time, it was with the stipulation that we were going to preserve these lands in perpetuity. So something that I dealt with, as well as fellow board members when I served on the Conservation Collier Advisory Board, was how to make sure that we were managing these maintenance dollars to make sure that we can preserve these lands for perpetuity, for forever, for our kids, our grandkids, and future generations, for future tourists and residents to enjoy. And I think another key fact of that is we have to make these lands accessible. Another big issue that had gone on, especially out in eastern Collier County and in the Golden Gate Estates, was the need for an ATV park. And I think that while some lands aren't really going to be acceptable for that, there's certainly different spaces, I think in the rural fringe and some other areas that can be developed in for outdoor recreation. And maybe it's not something like an ATV park, but it's opening up more space for camping, for kayaking, and things like that. That as long as people are able to get out and enjoy the outdoors in these preserves and parks, the more they're going to be supportive of programs like Conservation Collier, which is one of the most successful in the state. I think you look at other conservation programs, and it's not out there, but we've had really good success with it. And thank you, George, Stephanie, and Phil, for all tuning in. I see you all on now, so thanks so much for tuning in. And that brings us to one of our first questions. Phil had emailed in about one of the big issues that a lot of people don't know about is that there's a huge backlog of capital projects within our Parks and Recreation Department. And I saw this firsthand when I worked for the department right after I got done with college. We have a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of capital projects in Parks and Recreation that post the Great Recession have not been funded. There hasn't been a new funding stream allocated outside kind of the Parks and Recreation Capital Fund and their general fund. So one thing that I would like us to look at and vet through the advisory board overseeing the sales tax is looking for ways, especially for some of the smaller projects, maybe not the bigger ones, but for some of the smaller projects that the Parks and Recreation Department has, using some of those sales tax dollars. People don't realize it, but our parks are a great use for those dollars, especially when we look at being prepared for major storms and hurricanes and other natural disasters. Parks are major places for staging emergency vehicles, storing supplies, and also our parks act as shelters. And I don't know if anybody has ever been to one of our parks or shelters, but all of the parks employees go through FEMA training, and they are on that front line during natural disasters, right along with our first responders and those personnel working in the EOC. So I think that's a short-term solution. We only have the sales tax going on for a few more years, and I think that we should really look to solve some of those big issues with these dollars, because there's going to come a day when hopefully the Board of County Commission says, okay, we've done this sales tax for the time allotted and what the voters passed, and we need to turn and try to look at other revenue solutions. Another big thing is we have to look at our budget. We have to get creative and innovative about where we're putting dollars and making sure that we're putting them in the right places. When it gets to growth and development, housing, our environment, some of the other issues that we've talked about, we have spent time and time again countless millions of dollars on consultants to tell us how to solve problems, when we have the greatest resource right here, and that's our community. So we have to rein in our spending for these outside firms and really look to our neighborhoods, surrounding areas, small businesses, and saying, hey, we all recognize that this may be a problem. How do we come together and solve it? And it takes real leadership to get that done. It takes a person on the Board of County Commissioners with a vision, someone who's able to bring people together to unite our community and talk about the big issues and how we're going to tackle these tough problems. So that's something that I'm going to start on day one with. Just like Commissioner Fiala has been out and engaged in our community, I plan on, doing that as well, hosting town halls. I think her, bus visits to different parts of the county have opened up people's eyes to things that are going on that we don't see every day, and I think that's so important. One of the programs that I ran when I was at Florida Southwestern State College was a Know Your County Government program with the Boys and Girls Clubs here in Collier County. And, even starting from our high school students through our colleges and into our neighborhoods, our homeowners associations, and engaging the public in what's going on. And I think the more you do that, the more people have a positive affiliation with their local government, and the more willing they're ready to come together to solve some of these big issues, because not all the answers at the end of the day are going to lie with me, are going to lie with our Board of County Commissioners, our local government officials, county staff. At the end of the day, solutions are going to be best found in our communities. So that's who I'm going to put my trust in, and I hope you will do the same. So Phil, I hope that answers your question, at least in a short-term kind of solution as far as dealing with those issues that our Parks Department is facing. I think long-term we're just going to have to look at ways that we can cut our budget and maximize our dollars and what we're spending. So one of the things that I plan on doing is really bringing in the community and bringing in county staff to see what other solutions we've looked at in the past, what solutions maybe have fallen short at the board level, and also to see what our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board has as well as far as solutions. So another question that we got emailed in from Steve was what my position is on medical marijuana dispensaries in Collier County. Obviously a hot topic, but in the last election where this was voted on, Collier County voters spoke pretty clear and pretty loudly that we are for medical marijuana here in Collier County. Obviously it was not a overwhelming or a unanimous response in any sense as any hot button issue is going to be, but it's something that voters approved and the Board of County Commissioners need to take a stand on. Unfortunately, how the ballot language was set up, our state legislature dropped the ball. Tallahassee didn't want to tackle this problem, and so they passed that buck to the Department of Health, who, guess what, no shocker, did the same. So now this responsibility has fallen to local governments, and we've already seen communities around Collier County and within. Marco Island has made a decision, the city of Bonita Springs, other neighboring municipalities and counties have been moving forward, and they've opened up their doors to small businesses starting dispensaries, and also people seeking the medical help and attention, getting those services that they voted for having that option to have. I don't believe that it's government's responsibility or obligation to stand in the way between a healthcare provider and someone seeking a healthcare option, and that's what this is. I think it's getting together with stakeholders in our community, those that are concerned about it. Our Sheriff's Department has expressed concerns, some other organizations have expressed concerns about medical marijuana dispensaries, but at the end of the day, because some of these other municipalities and neighboring counties have opened their doors, if nothing else, it's actually going to have a negative response by Collier County not doing anything, because it's just going to open up more illegal sales. We're going to continue to see dangerous products being sold over county lines and illegally kind of behind the curtain, and we need to kind of face this problem head on. For zoning, once again, Tallahassee has dropped the ball. The Department of Health dropped the ball. They didn't really give too much direction to state and local governments and municipalities as far as what they wanted the zoning to look like. So we have to be able to craft them ourselves. And one of the first things I'm going to do in my first 60 days in office is host some town hall meetings, at least two, one in East Naples to try to be central to the district, and also one in Marco Island, since they've already created some language, and bring community members in and say, hey, where do we want to see these dispensaries? Do we want to try to put some limits or some restrictions on where we build them? And what are those going to look like? And really sit down and have a conversation with citizens, with residents, whether it's with those that are seasonal, those that live year round, and bring everyone into the discussion. And I also want to go out and have some meetings with other local government officials. I've already talked to a few in North Florida that have had some success with some of these ordinances, and talk about some of the things that have worked well and haven't. So we really craft a policy and an ordinance that is not too strict, but that also is not too open door, that we don't have any issues with that. So Steve, I hope I answered your question favorably, and if you have any other thoughts on the subject, I hope that you'll send us an email or let us know some of your thoughts. Would love to hear them on how you would tackle this issue and where your thoughts kind of line up on it. So I think another important issue that we're talking about, and we touched on earlier with our environment, is our water. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind is we really can't look towards looking at single issues in this problem at large. We can't put all the blame and go right to fertilizers. We can't put all the blame and go right to septic tanks. We can't put all the blame and go right to construction and things like that. We really have to look at the issues that are affecting our water, blue-green algae, red tide, things like that, as an encompassing issue, and try to tackle these individual problems in the best way. One of the forums that we had with the South Collier Republican Club was in regards to the septic tanks that are being removed in the Rosemary Heights area, Ridge Street, kind of all that area north of Creech Road, in between Park Shore over on the 41 side, and then the Goodlet Frank Road area. And it's really caused a lot of disruption to the neighborhoods that are in that area. A lot of those areas are seniors on fixed incomes that can't afford for the septic tanks to be taken out, and for new city water and county sewer to be put in. And I think we really have to look at that piece of the issue with septic tanks, is that we need to test the infrastructure that we have in certain areas and really make sure if we're not kind of jumping the gun too soon. My great-granddaddy came here in the late 20s and built one of Collier County, Southwest Florida's first septic tank companies that my cousins still operate today. And it's definitely jumping the gun on this issue if we're just saying, no, we need to do a full switch to, take us off septic tanks. They're 100% of the problem. That's what's causing everything, and it's just simply not the case. So that's something that we really need to do. We really need to look at this issue as a very large issue and make sure that we're not just going, after one small piece of it and thinking that that is kind of the end-all, be-all. So I hope that everyone has gotten some good answers to their questions. We'll continue to have our Facebook page open. You can still comment down below. You can still send the campaign emails. We will send out this video in our next email blast, so be sure to share it with family, friends, neighbors, small business owners that you know, to help get them involved in the campaign. Be sure to tune in next week. We're going to keep doing this on Mondays at 1 o'clock. We'll try to keep these videos short, kind of to the point, answer a few of the top issues. We also have a survey going around. We'll also include that in the next email, and I'll be sure to post it here on our Facebook page. Go onto that survey. It's got a few issues, and I'd love to hear kind of what you're most concerned about, and we'll try to target some videos on those topics as well in the meantime. Like I said, you can still send in your questions, and of course you can support our campaign by contributing at our website. which is jacobforcollier.com. We really appreciate all the contributions that have come in the last few weeks. We've seen a lot of momentum. For those of you that haven't seen the news, so honored and privileged to be endorsed by County Commissioner Donna Fiala, and there's been an overwhelming amount of support that's come from community leaders from all over the district, from the Port of the Isles to Marco Island, all over East Naples, different community organizations, homeowners associations, the Isles of Capri, from Goodland, and it's very humbling. I feel so privileged to be talking about these tough issues, meeting every day with concerned citizens that understand that this election, it has us at a major turning point, and in order for us to make sure that we can take on these big issues, that we have to work together. And I think especially during these trying times, it's bringing the community together to make sure that we work with each other, to present a shared vision, and to empower each other through these difficult times. So make sure that you spread the word to friends, family, and neighbors. We're out there, and I look forward to fighting for you in the future. And thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see everyone soon.